From around the corner and around the globe, bringing the pagan world to your screen, this is the Pent O'clock News for November 2013, with your co-anchors Michelle Hawkins and Carl Neal.
Merry meet and welcome to the Pent O'clock News. I'm Carl Neal. Michelle is out sick, so you're stuck with me for this episode. We hope you had a wonderful Samhain and have had as lovely an autumn as we have. We've got lots of news for you, so let's get started. Last month we told you about the tribulations of a pair of witches in the small town of Wedderburn, Australia, who faced stiff opposition to their plans to host a first ever New Age fair. The town of less than 700 residents was the scene of negotiation and compromise with 3 local churches who opposed the event. We're happy to announce that not only did the event take place without incident, it was a rousing success. In fact, this might be the first case I've heard of where an entire coven of witches came out of the broom closet together. After practicing secretly for years, the coven came forward into the public eye at the event. I imagine that came as a surprise to many people, especially those who initially opposed having the event in Wedderburn. More than 200 people attended this first ever Wedderburn New Age Festival. The Bendigo Advertiser even pictured the newly revealed coven in the local paper and on the web. As promised, representatives from some of the local churches that opposed the festival attended to, quote, represent the Christian community influence, end quote. We at the Pent O'clock News salute Gail Washington and Jackie Stallinga for their courage to go through with this event despite opposition. One of the witches who came out of the broom closet at the event said, quote, it's the first time I've really come out of the woodwork and told others about my beliefs. It was scary, but this festival helped me do it, end quote. Now that's truly amazing. An entire coven came out. Nobody was burned or hanged or fired or had their kids taken away. I think there are a lot of folks here in America who can draw courage from that brave group of ladies and take comfort in the response from the non-pagan members of their community. Sometimes I don't think that event organizers know what a difference they make for all of us. Without that festival, this coven would still feel the need to hide. So it's an awesome story. Now, most of us celebrated Samhain at the end of October side by side with the more secular celebration of Halloween. As anyone who's been in the pagan community for more than a few years knows, this is generally the only time that reporters seek out pagans and witches, often just for sensational stories to spice up their annual Halloween editions. What I've found interesting over the years is the shift in these seasonal stories. This year may have seen the largest number of stories ever in the American media that actually realistically portrayed pagans and Samhain. CNN, for example, did a great piece about real witches from Salem to Lancashire to Germany, Bolivia, and Mexico. They spoke with some actual practitioners and presented accurate information about witches of the past. Rather than sensationalize it, it was genuinely educational. It was also really interesting, which is a change from the normal Halloween fair. The Tennessean newspaper ran a great article about the meaning and history of Samhain. Although it was written by the paper's religion columnist, it had an energy and a passion that would have made it seem really at home on any pagan news site. In Pennsylvania, the Pocono Record ran a great article, I love this, with the headline, Tonight, Pocono Wiccans Party with the Dead. How true. What a great summation. The Central Michigan Life publication ran a great piece just after Samhain highlighting the locally sponsored Witch Week. Even the Anchorage Daily News ran not one, but 2 pieces on local witches that were excellent short introductions to real witches in Alaska. The writer of these pieces seemed to be genuinely interested in telling the story of the spiritual side of Halloween that few Americans even knew existed. Fox News even got in on this accurate approach to Halloween reporting with a unique story about witches in Nicaragua. I found it interesting that the Fox reporter even touched on the subject of white, black, gray magic when he asked about using magic to harm someone who had wronged another person. The practitioner that he spoke to explained that there are potions and magic that can be used to cause harm, but his preference is not to follow such practices. Now that's an interesting statement that's strikingly similar to what I've heard from many American witches. I'm looking forward to going through the mounds of stories next year and see if this trend continues. Now, speaking of Fox News, it's common to hear folks in pagan circles talk negatively about Fox and those who are generally politically conservative, heedless of the fact that there are right-leaning pagans as well as left-leaning. I'm the first to agree that Fox and others on the right have crossed the line more than once in their negative reporting about our community, but that makes it easy to dismiss them as enemies of paganism. That's why I wanted to bring you this story about Michelle Bachmann and comments she is quoted as giving a reporter this Samhain season. You may have seen reports about this, as once the initial story was published, many pagans around the country reposted or quoted it. Outrage built in some parts of the community that Bachmann would call for a ban on Halloween as being a satanic holiday. The reported comments were ridiculous to say the least, and the fury among many was instant. The problem was that Bachmann never made those comments. They were part of a story on a news satire website called Freewood Press. The satirical nature of the website is well known, and it's published prominently on their site. But people were so ready to believe that a well-known American conservative was attacking Halloween that the story went viral as if it were fact, not satire. I only mention this to remind everyone that not everything you read is true, even if you want it to be. And I'd also like to urge everyone to run stories like this through Snopes.com or another rumor website to confirm the authenticity before you repost it or start writing angry emails. Let's try to separate fact from fantasy when it comes to politics, and perhaps we can start to bridge the divide between left and right. So let me climb down off of my soapbox and tell you another interesting Associated Press article that Fox News ran on their website. It seems that archaeologists in Sweden have uncovered wooden monuments that predate the Viking era. The large wooden monuments, and the pictures are really cool, were located near a pre-Viking burial site. The find, uncovered during construction of a new railway line, included 2 rows of wooden pillars, one of which stretched for 1,000 yards. They were found in Old Uppsala, considered an ancient pagan religious center. The construction is believed to date to the 5th century, and the purpose of the columns really is still a mystery, but it was constructed, according to the archaeologist, quote, with a fairly modern way of thinking. We don't have many traces of these sorts of constructions from that time, end quote. I'm sure this has been inconvenient for the construction crew trying to finish their railway, but what an incredible find. I'm sure we'll learn much more in the coming years as archaeologists are able to study the information that they're gathering now. Now, the Wild Hunt reports that the Cherry Hill Seminary has announced the launch of a special program for pagans behind bars called the Pagan Life Academy. The series of low-cost lessons are designed to, quote, bring pagan values, ethics, and ritual to incarcerated pagans. Well-known pagan activist and prison minister Patrick McCullum helped to inspire this program and stated that the program is needed and that Cherry Hill Seminary was, quote, changing the world and making history. Each packet in the Pagan Life Academy costs $5 and includes lessons and ritual. It is based on the 8-spoke wheel of the year and written to be easily adapted to a variety of spiritual paths. An initial introductory lesson brings the total number of lessons to 9. Now, our neighbors up in Canada have taken a radical step when it comes to their prison ministers. After controversy broke out earlier this year when a call went out for Wiccan ministers, the Canadian federal government has now hired a private firm to handle the prison ministry for all faiths. The new company will eventually replace all of the individually contracted ministers around Canada. The new company was formed by prison ministers themselves, who plan to have much more flexibility when it comes to serving minority religions, including the pagan and Wiccan community. Now, we'll watch this change and report back on the progress in future episodes. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court heard arguments in October over the separation of church and state and the tradition of having prayers offered at public government meetings. Although the court has taken a decided turn to the right with the last several confirmed justices, there isn't a clear indication how the court will rule in the case brought by 2 women in Greece, New York. They objected to the offering of a Christian prayer before the start of the monthly public session on government. While the question centers generally on the legality of prayer at a government meeting, if the High Court upholds lower court rulings, then that might be interpreted in a way that would open the door to prayers from non-Christian religions. More than one pagan activist has pointed out that those who support the prayer at meetings are, in fact, supporting non-Christian as well as Christian prayers. It will be several months before we have a decision on this issue from the court. The state Supreme Court in Washington State is also considering an important question about religion. In this case, it relates to your job. In late October, the court heard oral arguments in Kumar versus Gate Gourmet Incorporated. The original lawsuit was brought by employees of Gate Gourmet, which is a company that provides food and beverages for commercial airliners, and included Hindu, Muslim, and Orthodox Christian employees who claimed that all of the lunch options offered to them violate their religious beliefs. For security reasons, employees are not allowed to bring in their own lunches or to leave to buy lunch, so their only choices are those offered to them by Gate Gourmet. The claims include allegations that the company sometimes puts meat products into vegetarian meals or pork in their meat dishes. If true, there's not only the question of violating the rights of the workers, but you have to wonder how many unknowing airline passengers were served meat or pork without their knowledge. The lawsuit may provide a clearer answer when it comes to employer responsibility to their employees. And if you're a vegetarian and you plan to take a trip by plane soon, it might pay to verify what company provides the meals for that flight. The meal provider is often based on the airport rather than on the airline you're using, so you might keep that in mind. In some happier news, October also saw the launch of the Wild Hunts annual fundraising campaign. Those of you who are regular viewers of the Pent O'clock News have heard us mention the Wild Hunt many times. This is an amazing website that provides one of the very few sources of original journalism in the pagan community. Columnists at the Wild Hunt have given in-depth coverage of many stories that would have otherwise been overlooked or ignored by the media. If you don't go there regularly, I hope that you'll visit wildhunt.org and go there soon and see exactly what I mean. We often cite the Wild Hunt as a source for stories here at the Pent O'clock News. They're not only a valuable resource for the community, they also produce very high quality stories that would be right at home at any news agency in the country. Amazingly, they do this with a very tiny budget. This year, their annual fundraiser set a very modest primary goal that was met fairly quickly. That's really a wonderful statement, not only about the Wild Hunt's value to us, but also a wonderful statement about the ability of the pagan community to come together and fund an important institution. Now, as we near the American Thanksgiving holiday, I hope that you will include the few precious institutions like the Wild Hunt that bless our community in your thanks. The Wild Hunt has met their basic needs with their fundraising, but they do have a stretch goal that hasn't been met yet. I hope that you'll visit the site and give what you can afford to help them reach this goal that will allow them to expand the services they currently offer us. Even $5 makes a difference. That's really true. Their fundraiser continues until November 25th, so please stop by and help if you can. There are several other special institutions that are part of our community that I hope you will also keep in mind this holiday season. We are blessed to have in our community an independent magazine publisher. Although theirs are the last such magazines being produced in America. If you've ever read Sage Woman, Crone magazine, New Witch, Pangaea or Pangea, or Witches and Pagans magazines, then you know how fortunate we are to have such courageous publishers working to help build the pagan community. No matter how business savvy these publishers may be, they need our support to continue to offer us another rare source of high quality journalism and really some unique insight for our community. A subscription to one of their awesome magazines would make a great Yule gift, hint hint, for friends or even for yourself. Their magazines are primarily funded through subscriptions, so each subscription you get is going to help to ensure that we have these awesome publications for years to come. I want to mention one more important institution that is critical to the growing pagan community. If you've never visited the Witches Voice website before, then you're in for a treat. The Witches Voice, more commonly called by its URL, which is Witchvox or witchvox.com. It's a premier resource, not only for original writing, but all kinds of announcements, networking, and a resource for sharing for pagans around the globe. This site has been run for many years by a very dedicated staff of volunteers in Florida, but even volunteer organizations need critical funds to keep operating. For a minimum contribution of $20, you can become an official Witchvox sponsor. I know that I gain far more than $20 worth of value from Witchvox every year, and I'm proud that I'm a sponsor personally and that the Pent O'clock News is a sponsor as well. Giving the gift of a Witchvox membership is also a great way to celebrate while supporting a vital pagan institution. It's also 401c3 tax deductible, So please remember these important institutions this holiday season and support them as part of your gift-giving plans. We also hope that you will keep all of the people of the Philippines in mind as well. That nation was recently struck by a massive storm, and international support is sorely needed. Pagan activist and disaster relief first responder Peter Deibling has issued a challenge to our community to give during this time of crisis. Peter said, quote, "Here's the challenge. I ask that every individual identifying as part of our pagan community do the following things. 1, select a relief organization that is doing work in the Philippines and donate what you can. 2, post a link to the organization and call everyone you know to take a similar action. 3, when the disaster fades from the news, show support for the idea of a pagan-led disaster relief organization. And please share this challenge far and wide." Our hearts go out to all the people impacted by this dramatic storm. Now, while preparing for this story about giving to pagan institutions, I had the unique opportunity to speak with the publisher of the magazines that we were just discussing. She and her husband publish really the history of neo-paganism. They present a unique point of view, and let's take a look at some of the highlights of the long conversation.
But I have seen a lot. I've been doing this for 25 years.
So how have things changed in 25 years?
How have things changed in 25 years? Okay, well, 25 years ago, everyone was in the broom closet. We start out with that straight up. And they were in the broom closet for really good reasons. And people, so one of the things that's changed the most is that paganism, Wicca, witchcraft have gathered a modicum of respect. Not so much that we don't still get, silly jokes about, pointed hats and all that sort of thing. But in terms of serious media, we don't get people who think that we sacrifice black cats at Halloween. So that's a huge, huge, huge sea change. And I really appreciate that. And I hope that, what we've done with our magazines, which have been available in mainstream stores for, a couple of decades, has helped, make that possible, along with all the other magazines that have been out there and work from people like Circle Network, who does a really good job, Lady Liberty League. So pagan civil rights are just completely different than they were. It's
so
just...
You think it's safer to be out of the closet now?
Oh, yeah. I don't think there's any comparison. I'm sure that there are still places, and you still will run across situations where there's hate crimes against pagans or so forth. But 25, 30 years ago, to even say that you were a W, a witch or a Wiccan, or even, people didn't have they didn't have a frame of reference. So if you were to use that word, what would follow would be an hour and a half of explaining that you weren't a Satanist. Nowadays, you don't generally have to do that. And in fact, a lot of people, myself included, who talk to the media these days, don't even include the "we're not a Satanist" line anymore. There's really no common definition of pagan at all. One of the biggest new movements in the community is heathen and other Reconstructionist paths. And I believe that those particular paths are a backlash, or perhaps a revolutionary step forwards, depending on how you want to look at it, from the kind of everything goes, white light, popular Wicca that people think they know what that means. For example, a lot of people think that Wicca means that you can just do whatever you want. People get the idea that there are basically no moral structures except don't hurt people. But of course, and ye harm none, do as you will. If you unpack that, it's probably at least as good as the golden rule in terms of forming an ethical concept. But if you don't unpack it, then basically it means go around, do whatever you feel like, as long as nobody gets hurt, which doesn't give you, well, it doesn't define harm. We could start with that.
So my deep thanks to Anne for giving her Saturday afternoon to the Pent O'clock News cameras. And we do have some sad news to report. On October 28th, Layne Redmond, well-known pagan drummer, writer, and researcher, as well as a very active voice for women's empowerment, crossed the veil. She's perhaps best known for her book, When the Drummers Were Women, which explored the previously unknown dominant role of women drummers in many different cultures throughout history. Not only was she well known within pagan circles, She was highly regarded by professional musicians as well. That led to her inclusion as one of Drum Magazine's heavyweight drummers who made a difference in the 90s. And she made a difference in a lot more than the 90s. She crossed after battling breast cancer for years, and we hope that in tribute to her, that if you could, you would make a small donation in her name to your favorite cancer research charity. Hers is a voice that will sorely be missed, and our hearts go out to her friends and family. A funeral in Oregon drew the attention of the infamous Westboro Baptist Church, who published a press release on their website proclaiming that they would protest outside the funeral of Army Ranger PFC Cody Patterson on October 20th, right here in Corvallis, Oregon. The response from the public was incredible, as all people of all faiths banded together to protect Patterson's family from seeing or even hearing the God Hates America rants from the Westboro folks. The Pent O'clock News was in the crowd and at the memorial service as well. Let's take a look.
Westboro Baptist Church's announcement that they would protest the funeral of PFC Cody Patterson as a, quote, pagan orgy of idolatrous blasphemy, end quote, brought out more people to the Army Rangers memorial service than live in his hometown of Philomath, Oregon. Throughout the crowd, you could see signs that read, "Cody, we've got your six," which is military lingo for "we're watching your back," and that's exactly what thousands of veterans, bikers, and concerned citizens did to help protect the service held on the campus of Oregon State University in Corvallis, Oregon. The crowd came to shield the family of the Army Ranger from the taunts and insults for which the Westboro church members are so famous. The Westboro group did not make a public appearance at the service, and the memorial took place without incident. Let's listen to a bit of the memorial, starting with Cody's sisters.
There's so many more tomorrows that we're going to wake up and we're not going to get to spend with him. But Cody was the kind of guy that his valor and honor, and he would just be so humbled by all of this.
It's something nobody but a true ranger could understand, and I think it's supposed to be that way. Cody, I'm so proud of you. And that is it. I just want to give him a hug.
Reporting for the Pent O'clock News from the Oregon State University campus, I'm Carl Neal. It was really quite a crowd. It was great to see that we could turn out such a big group of people of every faith, including many pagans, to stand against the hate. And it definitely worked. It was really incredible to come out of that service and find over 1,000 people standing silently in support of the family. Really amazing. Now, as we head into these dark days of the year, there's still plenty of activities to keep our community busy until Beltane. Here is a look at our community calendar. Take a look at what you need to add to your calendar. Finally, for this episode, we wanted to tell you about a programming change for our sister show, Magic Moment. Now, it's hard to believe that we've been bringing you Magic Moment every week for 6 months now. In that time, we've brought you stories from various festivals, gatherings, events, interviews with a lot of fascinating people, and a lot more, each in an 8-minute story. Now, Magic Moment was the first show that we launched and was truly meant to be an experiment to see if the pagan community would support that type of a show. It was really wonderful to see that support manifest many times as groups that were once closed and events that were closed welcomed our cameras in. Magic Moment was never intended to run for the long term in its original format, as it was a bridge to the creation of the Pent O'clock News and other programs that are still to come. We've loved doing the show in its current format, but I have to admit that it has been grueling for me personally to generate shows so frequently, in addition to everything else I have to do on a weekly basis, and of course producing the Pent O'clock News. Beyond that, we knew that we couldn't keep it in an 8-minute format for too long either. Trust me, the programmers at the television stations despise the fact that the show is 8 minutes long. So between those factors and changes that are coming to our shows next year as well, the time has arrived for a change. There will be one final episode of Magic Moment in its current format as we wrap up coverage of the Oregon Coast Pan-Pagan Gathering. Now that some technical issues have been cleared up, that episode will air very soon. There will be no more episodes after that in the current format. Instead, we're going to begin producing Magic Moment Special Edition. This is going to be a 30-minute program covering interviews and stories in much more depth than we have before. Magic Moment Special Edition will not run on a weekly schedule, but instead will be shown whenever a great topic presents itself. If you or your group or event would like to be featured on Magic Moment Special Edition, please reach out to us and we'll arrange it. The Pent O'clock News is not changing format, so expect to see us right here again in December with Michelle by my side. So our thanks to all of you for watching Magic Moment in its old format, and we're sure that you'll enjoy it in the new format. Look for the first Magic Moment Special Edition in a few weeks as we provide expanded coverage of that awesome interview with our last remaining pagan magazine publisher. So that's it for us for this month. We hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and keep in mind all the wonderful groups, charities, and organizations that make the pagan community a growing, prospering family. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll have a whole new passel of stories for you in December, so we hope you join us then. Blessed be.